Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking on a really complex topic, content moderation online.
It's huge and honestly kind of a mess.
Right. It's this massive paradox. We absolutely need sophisticated AI to, filter the incredible flood of online content, trillions of posts a year, apparently.
You couldn't possibly do it manually, not even close.
But here's the kicker. The very AI systems we built to protect us, they're turning out to be, well, flawed, deeply flawed.
Flawed is putting it mildly. We're talking arbitrary decisions, baked-in biases, and almost zero real accountability.
It sounds dramatic, but it really feels like it challenges core ideas of due process online.
It absolutely does. Think about it. These systems manage speech in what's essentially our modern public square. And when those systems are inconsistent or opaque or discriminatory, they start mismanaging fundamental human rights. Freedom of expression is the big one, obviously, but also procedural justice.
And nobody's really held responsible when it goes wrong.
Exactly. The whole centralized model, where a few big companies make the rules and enforce them with these imperfect algorithms, it's buckling. It's just not sustainable. And the costs, both social and financial, are piling up.
So for this deep dive, we've looked at sources highlighting two main threads here. First, the hard science. There's actual data showing that this thing called algorithmic arbitrariness.
Yeah, that's crucial. The proof that the inconsistency isn't just anecdotal.
And second, and this is where things maybe get a bit more hopeful, we're looking at the solutions emerging from the decentralized world. People talk about Web4.
The intelligent way.
And companies like Linkspreed. They seem to be trying to build ways around these big, flawed systems by making it easier for anyone to create their own digital spaces.
Democratizing the platform, essentially.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the core problem, this algorithmic leviathan, as our sources put it, the sheer scale, first off.
Right. The scale is just mind-boggling. You try to picture every tweet, every Facebook post, every YouTube video, every Instagram story, uploaded every single minute. Millions upon millions.
We get human review. It's physically impossible.
It's not even a choice. It's a necessity driven by volume. You have to automate.
And then you layer on the pressure from governments. Regulators are pushing platforms, demanding they act faster, rely more on AI.
Which just makes the existing problems worse.
Yeah, look at the EU's Digital Services Act, the DSA. It uses this risk-based approach for the really big platforms. Massive fines if they don't tackle systemic risks quickly.
Germany's NetzDG law is similar fast takedowns for certain illegal content.
But the example from Brazil during the 2022 elections, that sounds extreme.
Oh, it was. The Superior Electoral Court there demanded platforms take down specific types of false info within 1 hour.
1 hour?
1 hour. Think about that. There's zero time for a human to look at context, nuance, intent, or even appeal a bad call.
It forces pure automation. Whatever the AI says, goes instantly.
Exactly. And that intense pressure for speed and scale, it shines a spotlight on a huge technical flaw our sources kept bringing up: predictive multiplicity.
Okay, that sounds academic. Let's break that down.
It does sound technical, but the concept is pretty straightforward and really important for you, the listener, to grasp. Predictive multiplicity means you can create, say, 2 different AI models to detect toxic comments.
Okay.
Both models perform almost identically well on average. They get roughly the same overall accuracy score when you test them on millions of comments.
So they seem equally good.
On paper, yes. But here's the catch. When you give them the exact same tricky piece of content, maybe a comment full of sarcasm or political satire or something culturally nuanced, one model flags it as toxic and the other model says it's safe.
They disagree on the edge cases.
Precisely. They give conflicting predictions for the same input, even though their overall performance stats look the same.
So hypothetically, if Twitter used Model A today and an equally good Model B tomorrow, my perfectly fine tweet might get flagged tomorrow, but not today.
That's exactly it. The decision isn't based on some fixed objective rule about what's toxic. It can be, well, arbitrary, almost like a coin flip.
Wow. And what causes that difference? Is it big changes in the models?
That's what's so unsettling. It can be caused by incredibly subtle things that seem technically insignificant during development.
Like what?
Like changing the random seed. When you train a machine learning model, it starts with random numbers to set its initial internal parameters, its weights.
Okay.
If you change that starting random number, just the seed value, you end up with a slightly different final model. It performs just as well overall, but it learns slightly different patterns, leading to those disagreements on specific, often sensitive data points.
just changing the starting number creates a different outcome for my content.
It can, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the arbitrariness. It's not about the content itself. It's about a random choice made during the model's training.
The data we looked at actually puts numbers on this, and they're pretty shocking.
They really are. Researchers tested this using cutting-edge toxic text detectors models based on things like Toxygen Roberta, which are similar to what big platforms might use.
And they specifically trained multiple models that were identical, except for that initial random seed.
Right, just to isolate that effect.
Mhm.
And they measured how often the models disagreed simply because of that random starting point.
And the overall average arbitrariness.
It was around 34.0%, plus or minus about 0.8%.
34%. So over a third of the time, whether a piece of content got flagged or not was basically down to which random seed was picked, not because of a clear rule violation.
That's what the data suggests for those models and data sets. It's staggering. It means a huge chunk of moderation is effectively random chance, not consistent rule application.
That's not a minor glitch.
Not at all. And then they looked at pairwise disagreement. That's when two different models gave explicitly opposite predictions for the same content.
Like one says toxic, the other says safe.
Exactly. That happened about 8.3% of the time, plus or minus 0.2%.
Even 8% disagreement on stuff that affects people's speech, their livelihoods, that seems way too high for systems that are supposed to be fair.
If the foundation is random, how can it be fair? It fundamentally undermines procedural justice, due process, basic human rights principles.
Which brings us back to the human rights angle, arbitrary restrictions on speech. That sounds like it bumps right up against international agreements.
It does. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the ICCPR, is key here. Article 19 protects freedom of expression. Article 26 guarantees non-discrimination and equality before the law.
And if an algorithm treats identical posts differently just because of a random seed?
It violates both. You're not being treated equally, and your expression is being restricted arbitrarily.
This is how you get that algorithmic leviathan, isn't it? This huge, faceless, unaccountable system making decisions about fundamental rights based on, well, sometimes just randomness.
Precisely. The lack of consistency, the opacity driven by randomness, erodes the whole system's legitimacy, both legally and ethically.
Okay, so arbitrariness is one massive problem, the inconsistency. But these systems also have another issue, systemic bias. They're not just randomly wrong, they're often consistently wrong in ways that harm specific groups.
That's right. It's a different facet of the problem. Algorithmic bias isn't just a random error. It's a systematic, repeatable tendency for the system to produce unfair outcomes.
Unfair meaning?
Meaning it consistently favors one group, maybe based on race, gender, language, whatever, over another.
And this isn't usually someone programming explicit bias in.
Rarely. I mean, it could happen, but overwhelmingly, bias creeps in through the data used to train the AI.
Ah, the training data.
If the data reflect existing societal biases, historical inequalities, prejudices, the AI learns those patterns, becomes a digital reflection of our own societal failings. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Only the garbage here is centuries of inequality, and the output affects real people's lives.
Exactly. And the sources give some pretty clear examples of how this plays out. Language bias is a huge one. Well, most large language models, LLMs, are trained predominantly on English text scraped from the internet.
Right. The web is mostly English.
Which means the model learns an Anglo-American worldview as the default. It sees that perspective as normal or true.
So non-English perspectives get sidelined.
Or ignored completely. The example given was asking an LLM about liberalism. They'll probably talk about human rights, democracy, the Western view.
Okay.
But the idea of liberalism as opposing state intervention in economics or personal life, a common understanding in places like China or Vietnam, historically relevant views might be totally missing.
Because those viewpoints weren't represented enough in the English training data.
Exactly. The English-centric view becomes the objective truth presented by the AI.
That's subtle but powerful. Then there's the more direct stuff, like racial bias in systems used by the justice system.
Yeah, the Compass A example in the U.S. is infamous. It's software used to predict the risk of a defendant reoffending.
And the bias was?
Studies found it was significantly more likely to wrongly label black defendants as high risk compared to white defendants. Twice as likely, according to one major study.
So the algorithm wasn't predicting future crime neutrally. It was reflecting biased historical arrest patterns.
Precisely. The bias wasn't in the code's intent, but in the data it learned from.
And you also mentioned the label choice bias. That sounds different again.
It is. This happens when the designers use a proxy measure, something easy to measure that they think represents what they actually want to predict. But the proxy itself is biased.
Okay, give me an example.
The healthcare one is classic. Algorithms were designed to predict healthcare needs to allocate resources better. But instead of measuring needs directly, which is hard, they use predicted healthcare costs as a proxy.
Assuming higher cost means higher need. Makes sense on the surface.
But it's flawed because of systemic issues like unequal access to care, historical undertreatment. Black patients often had lower healthcare costs than white patients, even when they were just as sick or had the same underlying needs.
So the algorithm, using cost as the proxy, systematically underestimated the needs of Black patients.
Exactly. It ended up denying them access to important health management programs because their predicted cost was lower. The fix involved changing the target predicting needs more directly, perhaps using diagnoses rather than cost, which dramatically increased the number of Black patients correctly identified for help.
It shows how seemingly neutral technical choices can embed deep biases.
Absolutely. And all of this, the arbitrariness, the bias, is made worse by the black box problem.
Meaning we don't know how the AI reaches its decisions.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
These systems, especially the huge ones used by major platforms, are incredibly complex.
Yeah.
Often, even the engineers who built them can't fully explain why the AI made a specific decision on a specific piece of content.
And companies aren't exactly rushing to open them up, are they?
Definitely not. These algorithms are valuable intellectual property, trade secrets. They don't want competitors copying them or bad actors figuring out how to game the system.
Which makes sense from a business perspective.
But it creates a massive accountability gap. How can researchers, regulators, or the public audit these systems for fairness or accuracy if they can't see inside? How do you fix problems you can't diagnose?
You can't. It's a closed loop.
And then, just to add another layer of complexity, we have generative AI entering the picture, making everything even harder.
Deepfakes, AI-generated text.
Right? It creates what some call an epistemic threat. That means it undermines our ability to know what's real. If fakes become indistinguishable from genuine photos, videos, or documents, how do you trust any evidence?
You mentioned blackmail inflation. That sounds bizarre.
It's a weird consequence. If deepfakes are perfect, someone genuinely caught on camera doing something wrong could just claim, that's a deepfake. And because perfect fakes could exist, it casts doubt on the real evidence. Truth becomes harder to prove.
Wow. And AI isn't just making fakes, it's being used to spread disinformation deliberately.
Absolutely. We saw the Oliver Taylor example, a completely fabricated persona, fake photo, fake identity, who got opinion pieces published in real newspapers attacking specific people. That's targeted, AI-powered character assassination.
And on a larger scale.
AI-controlled bot networks, we saw them deployed during the 2016 U.S. election and other events, spreading hate speech, conspiracy theories, and disinformation on a massive scale.
Trying to sway public opinion or just sow chaos?
Both. And it creates a silencing effect. When online spaces become overwhelmed with toxicity and coordinated attacks, ordinary people, especially the targets of abuse, just withdraw. They stop participating in public discourse.
So let's pull this together. The big centralized platforms are struggling. Their AI moderation is arbitrary, it's biased, it's opaque.
And meanwhile, generative AI is making it easier than ever to create the very harmful content these systems are supposed to stop.
It feels like a breaking point. The centralized model seems fundamentally ill-equipped for the reality of the modern internet.
I think that's fair to say. It's a crisis of control, trust, and accountability. So if this model is failing, what's the alternative? And this, for me, is where it gets really interesting. The same force AI might actually hold the key to a different path.
Redirecting AI to solve the problems it helped create.
Exactly. By empowering smaller, more focused communities to take back control.
Okay, so this pivot away from the big centralized giants, what's driving it? You mentioned economics.
Economics is a huge part of it, let's be real. Developing sophisticated custom AI moderation systems costs a fortune. Google's Content ID system for copyright reportedly cost $100 million just to build.
Right. Only the huge tech companies, Google, Meta, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, the GAFAMs can afford that kind of investment.
Precisely. So if you're a smaller platform, a niche online community, a forum for a specific hobby, you simply don't have the resources or the deep AI expertise to build your own advanced filtering system from scratch.
Which forces you onto the big platforms or maybe using their limited off-the-shelf tools.
Exactly. You end up dependent on them, subject to their flawed, arbitrary rules. Because building your own ethical, nuanced system is financially out of reach. It reinforces their dominance.
But now you're saying AI itself is changing that equation.
Yes. This is the really exciting part. The same AI tech that created the scale problem and requires those huge investments is now becoming much more accessible, much cheaper, and much easier to implement. It's lowering the barrier to entry.
How? Are the models getting simpler?
Simpler, smaller, and more efficient. Think about large language models. A few years ago, you needed a warehouse full of servers. Now, models like Llama 7, that's 7 billion parameters, still very powerful, can run effectively on something like a Raspberry Pi 4.
A tiny, cheap computer?
Right. The power is becoming democratized. You don't need a massive data center anymore to run sophisticated AI.
And are the tools becoming more available too?
Yes. Things that were once proprietary secrets are now being released as public tools or APIs. Google's Perspective API is a good example. It lets developers score comments for toxicity, threats, insults for free.
So smaller players can integrate that kind of analysis without building it themselves.
Exactly. This technological shift means you no longer need that $100 million budget. Suddenly, creating a custom platform with sophisticated moderation tailored to your community's specific needs becomes feasible for almost anyone with a clear vision.
This sounds like the idea behind Web4.
It fits right in. Web4, sometimes called the intelligent web, is seen as the next step. It's about leveraging AI for smarter, hyper-personalized online experiences, integrating the Internet of Things, and critically continuing the trend towards decentralization.
Moving away from the walled gardens.
Right. Building systems that adapt to the user and the community, rather than forcing everyone into the same monolithic structure.
And this is where companies like Linkspreed come in. What are they doing?
They're basically operationalizing this Web4 vision. They offer what they call social network as a service.
Okay, what does that mean practically?
It means they provide the tools and infrastructure for anyone to really quickly launch their own custom social network. Their whole pitch is, start your social network today. Build a community, launch a business around it fast.
And the appeal is avoiding the problems of the big platforms.
Absolutely. Their core message hits that directly. Own your community. Don't build on rented land, meaning Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, where the rules can change overnight, where you can get demonetized or deplatformed arbitrarily.
So it's about control. Control over your rules, your data, your moderation.
Exactly. The creator with a community gets to define the terms, using these newly accessible AI tools to enforce their standards, not Meta's or Google's.
Do we have examples of this kind of tailored AI they offer?
Yeah, the script mentioned one Linkspreed developed, the Web4LS W4T5SM Emotions AI model.
Emotions AI, what does that do?
It's trained specifically to analyze social media text and recognize the emotions being expressed, anger, joy, sadness, etc.
Why is that useful for moderation?
Think about it. Standard keyword-based moderation might miss nuanced forms of harassment or bullying. Someone could be incredibly aggressive or passive-aggressive without using banned words.
So an emotion-detecting AI could flag posts based on hostile tone, even if the words themselves are technically okay.
Precisely. It allows for much more sophisticated, context-aware moderation. Maybe a mental health support group wants to filter out posts expressing intense, undirected rage, even if it's not targeted hate speech. This kind of specialized AI makes that possible.
And the point is, this level of custom, sophisticated AI is no longer just for the tech giants. Linkspreed is offering it as part of their service for anyone building a community.
Exactly. It demonstrates that accessible AI is enabling a new wave of customized, community-governed digital spaces.
Which leads us neatly into decentralized social networks, DSNs. This isn't just theoretical. These platforms exist now.
Right. We're seeing things like Lens Protocol, Minds, Mastodon, even platforms like Mirror, where you can mint your blog posts as NFTs, giving you true, permanent ownership of your content.
The common thread seems to be user control, owning your data, privacy, moving away from that central point of failure and control.
Definitely. And the federated model, like Mastodon uses, is a really interesting practical example of how this custom governance works.
How does that differ from, say, Twitter?
Well, with Twitter, everyone's on one giant platform with one set of rules. With Mastodon, you join a specific instance or server. Think of it like choosing an email provider. You pick Gmail or Proton Mail or whatever.
And each instance has its own rules.
Exactly. Each instance has its own administrator, its own terms of service, its own moderation policies. You choose the community whose rules fit your expectations.
So instead of one arbitrary central authority, you have many smaller, self-governing communities.
Right. And this embraces the idea that online diversity is valuable. Different communities should have different standards. Well, a professional network for scientists might have zero tolerance for any kind of personal attack or unprofessional language, even if it's mild. An art community might have specific rules about nudity that differ from general platforms. A gaming community might allow trash talk that would be totally unacceptable elsewhere.
They can define and enforce rules against content that's lawful but inappropriate for their specific context.
Precisely. They can use these now accessible AI tools, maybe that emotion AI we talked about, or other custom filters to enforce their chosen standards, not some vague, lowest common denominator policy designed for billions of users.
It replaces that centralized arbitrariness with local accountability. The rules are clearer, chosen by the community or its admins.
The governance fits the community's purpose.
But running your own instance or using a service like Linkspreed to build your own platform, that can't be all upsides. There must be new responsibilities.
Oh, absolutely. This isn't a magic wand. When you decentralize control, you also decentralize responsibility, including legal liability.
So the person running the Mastodon instance or the Linkspreed built community becomes legally responsible?
Yes. Suddenly, you are the platform administrator. You need to worry about things like GDPR compliance, if you have European users, data privacy, consent management.
What else?
Copyright. In the U.S., you probably need to understand the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, the DMCA. Maybe register for safe harbor provisions so you're not automatically liable if a user uploads copyrighted material.
And dealing with law enforcement requests.
That too. Things like the Stored Communications Act in the U.S. dictate how you must respond to subpoenas or warrants for user data. You need legal counsel, or at least a very good understanding of your obligations.
It sounds like a lot more work than just posting on Facebook.
It is. You need clear terms of service, explicit server rules. Your moderation can't just be automated. It has to be a socio-technical system, meaning you combine automated tools, maybe hash matching, to block known illegal content like CSAM, or terrorist propaganda, or content fingerprinting with human oversight. You need processes for users to flag content, appeal decisions, give feedback. You need transparency.
You basically have to replicate on a smaller scale the due process that the big platforms often fail to provide.
In many ways, yes. You have to be more diligent because the responsibility rests squarely on you.
And this customized, potentially more responsible approach looks even more appealing when you compare it to the regulatory heat the big guys are facing.
Exactly. We mentioned the DSA earlier. It forces the big platforms to report on the accuracy of their automated moderation. But measuring accuracy is incredibly tricky.
Why? Can't you just see how often the AI is right or wrong?
Not really, because most content isn't harmful. Imagine only 5% of comments are actually toxic. An AI that flags nothing is still 95% accurate by that simple measure, but it's completely useless.
Ah, the class imbalance problem.
Right. So regulators demand much more complex metrics. Things like precision, how much of what you flagged was actually toxic, and recall, how much of the total toxic content did you actually catch?
Calculating those sounds difficult and expensive.
It is. It requires sophisticated statistical methods, often stratified sampling, constant evaluation. It's a massive ongoing technical and financial burden for the large platforms.
So the intense regulation on the giants creates an incentive for niche communities to just opt out?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
If you're a group with specific shared values, the example used was a community for patriots on Web4.community, why deal with the vague, inconsistent, heavily regulated environment of Facebook or Twitter?
When you could use a tool like Linkspreed to build your own space in minutes.
Where the rules are crystal clear, tailored to your group, accountability is direct to the admin. And you can use these new affordable AI tools to enforce your specific standards, not navigate Meta's ever-changing, globally scrutinized policies.
It's like escaping the regulatory maze by building your own smaller, more manageable garden.
Precisely. The complexity and cost for the giants make the simplicity and control of custom platforms incredibly attractive.
Okay, let's try and bring this all together. We started with this algorithmic leviathan on the big centralized platforms. It's plagued by arbitrariness, remember that 34% figure, decisions based on random seeds.
And systemic bias, reflecting societal inequalities in the training data. Plus the black box problem, the lack of transparency and accountability.
Which created this crisis of trust. But then the very technology that enabled this mess AI started getting cheaper, smaller, more accessible.
Right. Powerful AI tools are no longer exclusively for the GA fams.
Leading to the rise of decentralized solutions and platforms like Linkspreed offering social network as a service. Suddenly, anyone can build their own custom digital community quickly and relatively easily.
It's a democratization of platform creation. driven directly by the failures of the old centralized model and the new capabilities of AI.
So the big takeaway seems to be this shift from centralized, flawed, one-size-fits-all moderation.
Towards a future where individual communities define their own rules, their own norms, their own ethical guidelines, and they use AI not as an opaque overlord, but as a customizable tool to enforce their specific standards.
Turning the algorithm from a leviathan into a precise, community-controlled instrument.
That's the potential, yes.
Yep.
More control, more accountability, better fit for purpose.
Which leaves us with a final thought, something for you, the listener, to chew on. If AI really makes it super simple and cheap, literally minutes to launch your own custom social network, what happens next? What happens when every niche interest group, every political faction, every brand decides, you know what, forget Twitter, forget Facebook, we're building our own space?
We escape the centralized control, but maybe we create something else.
Exactly. We gain tailored governance, but do we risk immense social fragmentation? Thousands, maybe millions, of bespoke digital islands. What does that do to shared public discourse? Does it ultimately enhance freedom of expression by letting communities set their own context? Or does it fracture it by isolating us in echo chambers with perfectly enforced but narrow rules?
We might escape the Leviathan, but find ourselves navigating a vast, potentially disconnected archipelago. What does true freedom of expression look like in that world?
Something to think about.